idea. It's kind of the core of how I shape my coaching. And there was heavy emphasis on this idea of soft and hard, sometimes at the same time, or soft and hard complementing each other. The idea of yin and yang.
Could you possibly explain how the system, like how it caters to the needs of high earning entrepreneurs seeking to scale their business?
Yeah, it's kind of the same idea of yin and yang, right? The shaman is the soft, the warrior is the hard, let's say.
Can you describe maybe a particular mindset shift that you think is critical for entrepreneurs that are looking to go from maybe 6 to 7 figures in their business?
Yeah, leadership. The role from 6 to 7 figures is actually working less, not working more.
In this episode, you're going to discover how martial arts principles can revolutionize your entrepreneurial mindset and skyrocket your business success. Meet Bogdan Rossu, a former martial arts master turned top tier mindset and business coach. Bogdan unveils his powerful techniques that blend the ancient wisdom of the warrior shaman with cutting edge business strategies. Stay tuned to learn how you can harness these unique insights to achieve unprecedented growth and success.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. I see that you transitioned from being a martial arts teacher to a sought after mindset and business coach. So could you share how the disciplines of martial arts have influenced your approach to coaching entrepreneurs to achieve personal and business success?
Yes. The most impactful idea, it's kind of the core of how I shape my coaching. I used to teach Wing Chun. Wing Chun is the Chinese martial arts. It was Bruce Lee's first martial art. And there was heavy emphasis on this idea of soft and hard, sometimes at the same time, or soft and hard complementing each other. The idea of yin and yang. So what I noticed in the coaching industry, even when I started, you hire a coach. Let's say you want to grow your business. You either get heavy support on strategy, on the how to do this, don't do that, or you get a bit of, but basically you don't have any mindset support. Or you get mindset support on how to better manage your emotions, how to use the law of attraction and other aspects like that. But nobody teaches you how to create more sales calls, how to actually sell, and so on and so forth. So what I would love to do is create a holistic approach because strategy is the car, mindset is the fuel. You need the right car, and you need the fuel that goes with it. So oftentimes you're kind of left with these abundance of cars, but you don't know which fuel goes to which car, and it kind of turns into a bit of a mess. Yeah.
That's an interesting analogy of car and fuel. I like it. I noticed during my research that your coaching emphasizes what you call the Warrior Shaman system.
Yeah.
Could you possibly explain how the system, like how it caters to the needs of high earning entrepreneurs seeking to scale their business?
Yeah, it's kind of the same idea of yin and yang, right? The shaman is the soft, the warrior is the hard, let's say. The shaman has to do with turning your traumas into treasures. All of the reasons why you think you can't, all of a sudden become the reasons why you will. The warrior is this idea that no matter the challenge, you're actually bigger than said challenge. It gives you the courage to go after bigger clients, bigger projects, and just expand in ways that you don't even imagine are possible right now. My philosophy is that it's never about the strategy. Yes, we go into personalized strategies and refining the strategy, but you can have the best strategy in the world and not get results, and you can have a crappy strategy and get results. The difference is your inner world, not just your mindset, but your heart set as well. So the shaman has to do more with the heart, while the warrior has to do more with the mind, the rational.
Okay, so mindset. I mean, we talk about mindset a lot. You just use the word. Um, can you describe maybe a particular mindset shift that you think is critical for entrepreneurs that are looking to go from maybe 6 to 7 figures in their business?
Yeah, leadership. It's a lot of what you teach because
Yes.
like the role from 6 to 7 figures is actually working less, not working more. And what I mean by that is thinking like true business owners think in terms of teams and systems. It's all about how you position yourself, right? If we are to take a bit more of a spiritual approach, it's the observer energy, the stepping back and looking at things as a whole, as a bigger picture. And when you do that, you're like, okay, what role do I actually need to hire for? Great, I'm clear on the role. What are the values that I want this person to have? Right? What is my mission? Can I talk about my mission for the company and the values of the business in the job offer so that I attract the people who actually resonate, who are aligned with it? What are the systems that I need to create to make delegating this effortless so that I don't have to hold people by the hand, right? Can I inspire leadership or self-leadership rather in my team to hit the same purpose of not holding them by the hand and instead actually have them teach me how the job can be done better, improve the systems themselves. So it's really a shift in identity because six figures is all about hands-on. Seven figures is more about let me replicate these hands, let me replicate this way of doing things. So that's the core. It's the shift in identity from solopreneur to really thinking, feeling, and acting like a business owner. And that takes confidence. I'll give you an example. One of my earlier clients, he owned two float spa locations, and he was looking for a manager for the locations. He was interviewing this rock star, amazing dude, incredible resume, but he ended up not hiring the guy because he thought, if I hired this guy, who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be leading? He felt intimidated by the guy.
Mm.
So he missed out on this opportunity because his leadership confidence didn't match the opportunity.
Well, that's interesting because that's one of the things that I see with like CTOs that I work with. You know, most of them aren't entrepreneurial. I mean, there's a handful that are, but most of the ones I work with are they're on, you know, your typical career path of, you know, they were a software developer and then they were a lead developer and they just kind of worked their way up. And so
Right.
of course, along with that comes the typical problems that they were never taught to be a leader. So now
Mhm.
suddenly they're in charge of a team of people working for, you know, $1 billion company, and they're just not used to, you know, what do I do? And exactly that, rather than understanding that as a leader, you bring in people on your team who are going to make you better, they
Yeah.
worry about, uh-oh, you know, what if they take my job? What if they do this? That's really, really, really relevant to my people anyway. So what are some common mental barriers that you've observed in your clients?
Thinking you're one way in this circumstance and then believing you're a different way in this other circumstance. Here's what I mean.
Yep.
So if somebody, work their way up through the ranks, they're probably a pretty good coder. Like, let's say the job entails a lot of coding, right? So the definition is I'm really great with code, I'm not that great with people. What if I told you you are? Because you
Yeah,
spent a
I
lifetime
believe it.
building this asset of coding, which is a language, right? Why not use that same language in relationships? Like, I'm not a coder, but I know when you start coding, you need to open up the code with something, right? There's like a few characters to open up the code or the command, and then you have to close the command with something, right? People are the same way. But it's about, okay, what is the actual opener, right? The opener usually, when you want to lead effectively, is understanding your team's dreams. What are their hopes? What are they aspiring for? What are their fears, right? Let's say somebody wants to become an incredible parent. That can be, your opener. Hey, may I have a conversation? I think I want to share some insights that I think will really help you out both in your personal and professional life. And they're like, sure. Hey, I noticed that I know we talked about this and you said you like being a great parent is really, really important to you. And they're like, yeah, great. So now you open the conversation. Now it's time to kind of, in a sense, quote unquote, write the code and say, hey, I noticed you're kind of slacking off or like your code is a bit messy in this circumstance. Do you think it's important to um teach organization to your kids when you're a parent? And they're like, yeah, it's actually yeah, it's really, really important. Do you think that kind of allowing yourself to gain this skill now at work will improve, you as a parent? Like, you know what? Actually, yeah. So when and you also couple it with like you end the code with really praising them, like what you really appreciate them. This can also be an opener or a closer. It's like the feedback sandwich, right? You start with something you really appreciate, you give the feedback, and you end with something you really appreciate as well. That's it, you know? It's not about being something different. It's about being the version of you, the best version of you, bringing that into all the games you play in life.
So what are some strategies though that you have like for overcoming that kind of mental barrier of, not looking at the team that way? Like, because obviously if they don't, their team's not going to perform as well. And overall, what I think what some people, as we talked about, like people start out as like a software developer and they're judged by the results of their code. How many bugs do they end up putting out
Mhm.
when they first release the code? How well were they testing, et cetera. But leaders are judged more by not just their own performance, but their team's performance. So
Yep.
what are some strategies you recommend for overcoming that kind of barrier so they can achieve like a freedom?
It's less of a strategy, it's more of a principle. It's the way we live our lives is based on our definitions. If leadership is this weird thing that's kind of really undefined, or you have a bit of a weird definition around leadership, like I don't understand it, it's going to be very, very difficult to manage. But if you simply define leadership as listening, right? We start with the same what do you call it, letter, right? Listening, deep, deep listening, listening in between the lines to what people mean. It takes a bit of skill, but it's about asking questions. Be the person who asks the questions, right? In most circumstances, because also funny enough, the person who's asking the question is leading the conversation. And the more you ask and listen, the more your team will trust you, they will follow you and take note of the answers and treat them like a database of ideas, or actually create your own database of answers. And, for each people, you'll understand what's important to each member of your team. You will see a huge difference and do your best. Like the purpose of a leader is not just to increase company profits, it's to get their team closer to their dreams, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's something I think people miss too, is that you're also judged as a leader by how well your team grows. If
Mhm.
you look back from 5 years ago and you're seeing someone is in the same exact spot, why is that? What did you maybe not see? And what feedback perhaps didn't you give over that time that would have helped that person grow? And you have to think about that because that's to me one of the integral things, or one of the most important things about leadership is understanding your team. It's a lot like, if you think about it, like putting together a car. A mechanic knows what parts go where and why they go there and how they interact. You need to do the same thing with your team. The pieces have to go in the right place at the right time, and they have to learn to work together. And I think that to me, one of the biggest challenges of a leader is the interactivity between the team members. Like I give you an example. For me, when I was a CTO, one way that I got them to respect each other a little bit more was we would do a section of our monthly meeting, what's working, what's not working.
Mhm.
And of course, we
Mhm.
would celebrate the things that are working well. But let's say users are complaining suddenly that they're getting a lot of spam email and they don't understand why.
Right.
I want my email administrator to take a look at that. And that's an obvious thing because that's his job. But in the what's not working, we create a mini project and then we might put the help desk lead in charge of the mini project. And by
Mhm.
doing that, they get exposed to what the email administrator does,
Right.
and they're the ones who are assigned to remove the roadblocks that come up. And so the administrator comes to them and says, "Hey, this is a roadblock. Can you help me fix it?" They start to learn about the struggles that the other role has, And
I love
suddenly it's
that.
not like, well, what does that guy do all day except sit around and play with email? You know, they start to learn like, oh, wow, like he has this issue that he has to deal with and that issue. And then they build respect for each other. And once they build respect for each other, they work better together. And it was a thing I did quite successfully for a long time. And quite honestly, it was one key component to why I came up with a decentralized A team method is that I was working close to 100 hours a week. And
Yeah.
a lot of it was trying to connect people in two roles together so that together they could push things to completion. And it was just so successful that I preach it to this day. Like, you know, you have to, you can have one of the things that leaders have said to me is, well, why would you put the help desk lead in charge of that project? Well, and my answer back is, well, why wouldn't you? I
Mm,
mean,
hmm.
they just need to know how to set meetings, get information, send an email to the right person, you know, knock on the right doors. They don't need to know how to fix the email problem. They have somebody on their team, the email administrator, who's going to help them with that, and they're going to take care of it. So I say the reason I put the help desk guy on there is that very reason. He knows nothing about what the email administrator does, but I'll tell you, when they're done with that project, he will know a lot about what the email administrator does, and they stop complaining about one another because that's something humans do, right?
Yeah.
How come I'm working so hard and that there's not doing anything, right? It's just their thing. So it's always kind of a I can't think of the word here, but it's just something that you're constantly dealing with as a leader. And I don't think most leaders aren't prepared for that. They think that they're going to go in and they're going to say, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then the next day, do this, do this, do this, do this. And that never works ever.
No,
Yeah, so,
because you're not running a kindergarten,
right. Right. Well
right?
put. Well put. Now you have a
I,
background in martial arts. All right. And that's a very known to be a very disciplined thing. Um, how are you integrating martial arts principles into your coaching?
right. Before I answer that, let me just emphasize how much I love what you just shared and having this cross collaboration. That is so unique and so powerful. And you're absolutely right. Like when you understand the other person next to you, it's like the reason for complaining just goes away. Yeah,
Yeah, thank
I
you.
love it. I love it. It's less about in the beginning I was talking a lot more about the parallel between martial arts and coaching. It's less about the actual principles and actual techniques, but I think what I learned from martial arts that I use in every single interaction, every single conversation is that when you're sparring, you're not just listening with your eyes or your ears for what is happening. You're listening with your whole body. And that's something I love to do. And it's been instrumental in my coaching, regardless of the person I have in front of me. I pick up on these very, very fine cues that a lot of people miss. And I can see, things a lot clearer than if I hadn't. In Wing Chun, we would do this exercise. We would cross our hands, like have contact with the hands, and you would feel like if you touched their right hand with my left, I would feel when the free hand was about to hit me. So they're very, very small cues. So basically, my body's my nervous system is programmed in that way to pick up on the minute.
That's very interesting. I had never even given that some thought, but I know like I did some boxing training for a while and it's the same thing. You kind of train to see the hand coming at you and kind of minimize the impact by whatever, you know, defensive maneuver you try. So like I want to go into some like less businessy questions perhaps and a little more thought-provoking questions. So like
Yep.
imagine entrepreneurship is a martial arts discipline.
Mhm.
What would be some foundational moves or techniques that every single entrepreneur should master?
Uh, Obviously, marketing and sales, that's the core to any business, but it's kind of like, there's the discipline you do and there's the style you have, right? You have a plethora of boxers but they all have different styles. So what I think is important is not just understanding the technique, because that's what it is, right? You have the same techniques in boxing. What are they? 6, 8 techniques, 8 punches, right? You tell me, Mike, because you're more
Yeah,
knowledgeable.
yeah, that's
How
correct.
many are there? 8 or 6?
I think it's 6.
6, right? So you have
Yeah.
6 techniques and you have almost an infinity of styles. It's not about the technique. How do I market? How do I sell? How do I grow a team? How do I create better offers? Technique is easy. It's who's behind the technique. So that's what most entrepreneurs are missing. I had an interview with someone last week. He built a multi-million-dollar business helping coaches grow their coaching businesses. And along the way, he lost sight of the who was behind the technique, because when he started, he was passionate about building the person that will build a business. And then he found himself building businesses with his clients and kind of forgetting about the person. And he burnt out because there's nothing more exhausting than trying to be someone else. When you market, when you sell, when you create offers, all of that jazz, when you lead, be you, feel you. And that takes guts. That takes
Yeah, that
guts.
that's you. That's what makes you. That's what makes the whole approach unique, is by, having it come from you the way you would do it, the way you would say it. Too many people, when they do marketing, I totally agree with you. Like when they do marketing, it's like, I'm going to try to write this in a way that other marketers would write it. All right, maybe, there's a little bit to be said for that, but don't be afraid to interject your personality and your feelings into that piece. Because when people are buying, let's be real, most of the time people don't buy based off of the contents in the program. They all know, people expect that if you're spending $10,000 on a coaching program, they're expecting
Mhm.
results. It's the
Mhm.
person behind the coaching program that they're investing the $10,000. That's why they're putting that money down, is the person on the other
100%.
side. They're not, anyone, and I even admitted, I came up with the decentralized A team method, but anyone could teach it. Um,
Right.
you know, but probably not as well as me. I'm the one who
Yep.
created it, and it's my techniques. That's a great point, that techniques are less important and more important is personality and who you are.
Yeah, and I used to get so frustrated whenever somebody said just be yourself, when, I struggled with dating in my 20s and like be yourself. And then like, can I swear on this?
Yes.
Yeah. What the fuck does that mean? Like, be myself. What do you mean? Like, or in my marketing, be yourself. What does that fucking mean? Like, if somebody could have just outlined what that was, it would have just saved me so much. What I, what I'm just not to be too much, what's the word, to spit out kind of the same ideas. What I found to be your true self is the self that you allow yourself to be when you're okay with whatever happens. It's like if you don't care whether the person goes on a date with you or not, and you're fine, you're the you're most it's the most relaxed, free version of you. When you don't care whether the marketing efforts work, that's the most relaxed version of you. When I say you don't care, I mean you do your best, but you have the confidence to know that if it doesn't work, you have the creativity, the resources to create something else. If this person doesn't buy, you have the confidence in yourself to say, hey, you know what? I got this far with this person. I'm probably going to go this far with this other person, with the next person. So it's really about having the self-love and confidence to really understand that you have like infinite creativity and there's infinite possibility, and coming from that mindset of abundance. This is what I mean. The freest version of you within, the lines of the laws that we have, right? That's your real self. When you're not attached to it has to be this way, trusting that whatever failure you're going through, it's deeply serving you. And it's like, yeah, cool. You don't buy, great. What can I learn from this? That's the version of you that sells. That's the version of you that markets well, that's the version of you that attracts other leaders and can lead highly qualified people, people who are actually smarter than you.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about people being afraid to necessarily hire someone that's smarter than them. And I mean, I actually had one person in that exact situation, and he had hired somebody, and then he was worried that they were coming after his job. And I said, so why don't you find out what their goals are? Because
Yeah.
you're going to probably find out that their goal is not to be the CTO of the company.
Yeah.
And find out what their goals are. And once you find out what their goals are, listen and pay attention, and then stop being stressed out about them trying to steal your job. Um,
Yeah.
and and the reality is, if you position yourself correctly, no one's going to steal your job. In fact, what's really going to happen is you're going to get promoted, and then they're going to get promoted to your spot. And that's what you really want to see is someone from your
100%.
team slide into your seat while you move on to, more leadership. So
Ooh,
let's say you're going to create a mindset emergency kit for entrepreneurs.
right.
What are 3 items that it would contain and why?
What's the emergency?
It's a mindset emergency. It's to fix mindset problems.
Yeah, that's a bit too broad because it's kind of like mindset is a bit of it's an art, it's a music, right? You're very familiar with that.
Mhm.
Mindset is kind of the chorus to a beautiful song or to a nasty song, right? So
Exactly.
if you can give me a bit of context, like a situation, maybe something that's very, very common for your audience, maybe I can give you a more precise answer.
Okay, sure. Like let's say that we have a group of entrepreneurs who have imposter syndrome, and
Mhm.
we want to give them an emergency mindset kit to fix imposter syndrome. What 3 items will we put in there?
You cannot fix imposter syndrome, nor should you try.
Why is that?
Because no matter the level you're at, you're always going to deal with it. And the higher you go, the bigger the imposter syndrome. It's not this is where the shaman mindset comes in. The shaman also turns shit into gold. And this is like an extensive topic that we talk when it comes to the shaman mindset. Here's the idea. Imposter syndrome is the way that you kind of decide to hear that voice inside of your head. If you say it's a feeling, but because of our filter of negative beliefs, we give that feeling a negative connotation and a negative definition. It's saying, oh, I'm feeling this because I'm not good enough. But what if that critical voice inside of you is actually your best friend? And then when you get that feeling, you just take it, you just switch the filter. And what you hear is, oh, wait a second, I'm having this feeling because my inner world, my inner voice is trying to point out a few gaps in my system, a few gaps in my approach, a few gaps in my skills. Okay, this is exciting. I can now fill up those gaps, right? What if you use it as kind of indication of opportunity rather than an indication of you're not good enough, which is that's what it actually is, right? But because of our weird upbringing, we're constantly taking every opportunity to remind ourselves that we're not good enough or to tell ourselves that we're not good enough. So this is what I'm saying. Imposter syndrome with a different filter is a huge asset. You would never want to get rid of it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's say that Tony Stark from Iron Man. Are you familiar with Tony Stark from Iron Man? Let's say
Sure.
he comes to you for coaching. All right. This is the guy who needs to balance superhero duties with running a multi-billion-dollar company. All right.
Right.
How would you coach him?
What's the goal?
Well, he wants to balance his superhero duties with running a
Mhm.
multi-billion-dollar company. So, he's going to need to know probably how to do time management better. He's going to have to decide what's more important at a time. How would you coach him?
Hmm. What's the why for each? Like, I would first get very, very clear on what their core why is. So it's obviously to make a difference in the world, right? Either through, blowing up tanks or through creating technology. And I would ask him to show me. Now we can get into a bit of a martial arts analogy, right? It's when you're sparring, you know this. The opponent, if you pay attention, the opponent will show you how to hit them, right? So I would ask him to show me what's the fastest, most effective way for him to achieve his vision. Is it spending more time as Iron Man? Is it spending more time as Tony Stark? What could he automate, delegate, multiply, systemize for each? Hmm? I don't need to tell him what to do. He already knows what to do. But it's that nobody really asks him these deep questions, like what's truly meaningful for you? What do you think will get you there faster, with less stress, less effort, and with more fun? And sometimes all it needs is just having this conversation, and you hear yourself, speak it out loud, and all of these ideas just pop into your head, all of this things that you just needed to validate and you had no idea you did, all of the things that don't really make sense that you're doing pop up, and you can decide what you can do with them.
Yeah, it makes sense. I
I'm
mean, it makes sense what you're saying because like like I mentioned earlier, I spent a week at a video marketing conference last week, and I know a lot about video marketing. I mean, I've grown this show, I've grown some other shows. But when they ask certain questions, like to make you think, um, you realize even though you kind of already know, you
Yeah,
haven't given it the thought that it deserves to
the
push it
process.
further
Hmm.
along. You're kind of
Hmm.
like at this line and you can't cross the line for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Well, the reason is
exactly.
you've been given it enough detailed thought to like push it forward and take that next step. You're sort of it's like, you mentioned before, it's like a kindergartner versus a graduate
Hmm.
student. They
Yeah.
approach learning differently. And it's experience and it's the questions. That's a great point because as a coach, I do it all the time. The questions that you ask, pull it out of them to show them that they know it, and it builds confidence. And then when you build confidence, like I saw a lot of people leave that conference, and it's very typical. It kind of reminds me of people going to a religious service. They leave, they're all fired up, and they're going to be a better person, and they're going to do this.
Yep.
It's the ones that implement what they learned that actually make the change, not, and that's because they've thought it through and decided where it's going to take them.
And to kind of circle back to the question around time management for Tony Stark, I was having this conversation last week. I don't believe any of us have a time management problem. Nobody. You know, I think it's a vision and confidence problem. Again, we circle back to confidence because I think it's the core to everything. Here's what I mean. Vision, right? Improve humanity for Tony Stark. The confidence uh component is, can I actually do it and actually make it last? That's kind of the thing that's missing from most people. Can I make it effective? Because like thinking about it, what was Tony Stark famous for? Creating weapons, right? He recently, like in the movie, he shifted to, wait a second, this is not the right way. This is not my true self, right? The confidence is, can I make an impact being my true self, right? Because if you have a clear vision and it's exciting, you can weigh everything um to, is this bringing me closer to my vision, or is this pushing me further away? Now, if you don't really truly believe you can achieve that vision and really get close to it, of course you're not going to do more of the things that get you closer to the vision. You're going to go back to autopilot and do a lot of things that are not that meaningful, hence the time management challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I actually agree with you on that. I used to teach. My wife owns a VA agency, and I used to work with her VAs on um, just getting things done. Like how can I get more done? And it was 99% of the time it was somebody they were avoiding the tasks. It wasn't that they couldn't do the task. It wasn't that they didn't know the tasks were there. It wasn't that they weren't aware of them. It was that they were well aware and they were just like, I don't even want to deal with that task. I'm going to go
Yeah.
this way, not that way. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think that um, people don't have a time management problem. They have more of an avoidance problem. Like, heck, I don't want to do that. And I mean, that's really, I mean, honestly, it's why your answer earlier about, find out what Tony Stark's why is for those two things. and then determine where he should be putting most of his time. If he should be putting 70% over here and 30% over here, then that's what he should be doing. And there's a reason for that. Some things we as human beings, we gravitate towards what we resonate with, what's important to us. And so by finding the why and thinking it through, and like it's not enough to ask somebody, well, what's your why? Then I
Yeah.
sometimes will say, but why is that your why? Like what is it about that that's getting you turned on? What's got you revved up, And then they start going down this road and like, Mike, I never thought about it this way. Like it's not just this, it's this and this and this and this added to that. Okay, great. Well, now you know where your mission is. And now go and achieve it, make the mission
Yeah.
happen. That's why mission statements back in the day used to be so huge for companies and they've kind of gone by the wayside. Is that, I remember I worked at a company for what was started by three guys who were best friends, and they had the mission statement painted on a wall in the office, and they'd point to it during meetings, like, remember our mission statement number 4. And it was kind of hokey, but at the same time, I damn well knew their mission statement, and I knew how to take my role and make it fit that mission statement.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's some great points there, like time management. Who people know how to manage their time, they just choose not to because they're trying to avoid doing something that causes them pain, and maybe figure out why is that causing you pain. Can you
Hmm.
fix that? Is it something someone else should do? That's one of the keys to delegation. I always tell my executives, all right, you have this team of really smart guys. Give them some of the work. They can prepare this report for you. They're capable of compiling data and creating a report. Why are you doing it if you hate it so much, right?
I had this same conversation with my dad in my 20s. He's like, oh, I'm bored now. I'm gonna sell the business, get a 9 to 5. And I'm like, Dad, seriously, what did you do today? Like you went, you paid some bills, talked to customers. Like, are you telling me that you don't have one guy in the whole team that can do some of this for you? Right?
Well, yeah, and it's funny, like he's ready to quit and go get a 9 to 5 job because he's tired of dealing with those things. When in
Yeah.
reality, he doesn't have to deal with them. He's the leader. He gets to decide who deals with them. And it kind of goes back to understanding your team too, though. Like me, I used to have a guy who was the most brilliant network engineer I've ever worked with, to the point where you'd call him with a problem and he'd say, I know what it is. I unchecked a checkbox. Give me a few minutes, I'll fix that. And boom, it would be gone.
Mm.
Problem would be gone.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
he really loved data. Well,
Yep.
when I'd have to provide reports to my management team that had a lot of data, I'd hand it off to him and say, "Hey, his name is Mike as well. Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
take care of this for me, will you?" And he'd love it. Other people, if I did that, they'd want to shoot me. But he was my best friend because I gave him data to work with. It was always an interesting and strange interaction around that because he was very what's the word, introverted. Like he wasn't the
Hmm.
guy that would talk during meetings, but he sure let it be known that he loved data. So
Yep.
well, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed the time here with you. I appreciate you being here. Why don't you let the listeners know where they can find you?
These days I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and Instagram, uh, pausing a bit on YouTube from my main channel. My coach got me to delete a lot of the shit that I was doing just to get focused and not have time management challenges anymore, right? So yeah, mostly LinkedIn and Instagram these days.
Awesome. And I want to point out that he said his coach. We coaches
Yeah,
have coaches as well.
you need
It's
them.
important. And I feel like we'd be hypocrites if we didn't.
True.
But again, thank you so much for being here. It's been a great conversation. I've truly appreciated your time.
It's my pleasure. You're a great host, great listener, and you've asked some very, very unique questions. Nobody ever asked me how would I coach Tony Stark, and now if somebody else does, I have the answer already.
Yeah, I try to make it a little more interesting for the interviewee sometimes because I know you guys go on a lot of shows and you get asked the same things about your stuff, and sometimes we want to like spread our wings a little bit and maybe talk about something different. So Anyway, well, thank you everyone for listening to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every single Wednesday. They release at 8 a.m. Pacific on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you next week.